Hi, everyone. Harry here with the election news of the day, and this out of two pretty important states. Texas, I believe, third most populous state and a Republican stronghold, and the all-important Pennsylvania, where increasingly it looks as if any winning path to the presidency for either candidate must include Pennsylvania. Let's start in Pennsylvania. We had a decision out of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court about whether mail-in ballots that were defective in certain ways, most notably if they didn't include the secrecy envelope, could be cured by provisional ballots. So the procedure is similar in many states. You do your ballot, you seal it, and then you put that sealed ballot in another envelope. We have a couple voters in Pennsylvania who didn't, in fact, use the secrecy envelope and just sent it along. And they were notified of this problem and told they could cast provisional ballots. Provisional ballots means you show up on election day, you cast your ballot, and if the ballot that you previously cast is found to be ineligible or defective in any way, the provisional ballot is good to go. As it turns out, the Pennsylvania election code for provisional ballots doesn't specify that one use of them is for ballots that are flawed in just this way because they don't have the secrecy envelope. And so guess who? Republicans in the Butler County Election County Board told the two voters, nope, rejected the ballot, as did a trial court, and then it went to the Commonwealth Court and Intermediate Court, which in a split decision said, no, look, this is what provisional ballots are for. There's only one ballot in question here. It's the one that was defective, and the voters were told they could do it. This is okay. And it went to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, which yesterday issued a 4-3 decision affirming the Commonwealth Court. So a victory for, it turns out for Democrats, but Democrats are always in this position of wanting to expand the franchise and Republicans to contract it. But the Supreme Court said that this is a fair use of provisional ballots. It's really what they're for. It makes sense given the whole scheme. So these two voters, and by inference, anyone else who does this, and there could be thousands, and, we're in a situation in which every little thing multiplied by the voters in the state really could be pivotal in the actual election. The numbers that we could be talking about in Pennsylvania are something like we talked about in Florida in 2000. Hundreds of votes could potentially matter. So anyway, voters who neglect to use that secrecy envelope, they're notified that their ballots are defective. That's part of the code anyway. But in addition, as they were notified, they can now show up on election day, cast a provisional ballot, and if their original ballot isn't counted, the provisional ballot will be. That's a victory for Democrats, whose calculation is that more of those mail-in ballots will be for Democratic candidates. It's a little tricky, actually, that supposition. Everybody's shooting in the dark somewhat. It had been the case in past elections that Democrats were much more likely to use mail-in ballots, or that mail-in ballots were much more likely to be from Democrats, I should say. That seems to be less the case in this election, though there's still a majority. So there's still a reason for the Democrats to have fought this fight, and now they've won it, as they have in parrying so far most of the Republican efforts that have gone to court, for instance, in Georgia. Okay, now the second thing that's happening is down in Texas, where the state attorney general there, Ken Paxton, has sued the federal government for information on non-citizens. So this is absolutely down the middle of the Republicans' favored theme of this year, that there are all these ineligible non-citizens voting. In fact, every expert who's looked at it says that's malarkey. Possibly 20 years ago or so, but it seems to be a negligible number at best. And you have to think about it. What non-citizen is going to show up to vote, which they're not permitted to do by law, and they're just advertising for being deported, especially should Trump win, when there's going to be hugely increased deportations. Anyway, what Paxson said is, we don't know. Maybe a lot of these voters, people who happen not to be able to produce driver's license from the DMV, are non-citizens, but they admitted in court, something opposed to their rhetoric in the public, that they're very few. We know that the great majority will not turn out to be non-citizens. They have sued, saying that the federal government has to give them the information, and they can't get it from what the federal government has provided so far. So it turns on a provision in federal law that says the feds will respond to a inquiry, and the lawsuit says they haven't responded yet. The feds say, yes, we have, and we pointed him to the database, the only one that we know of that they could use. He's not satisfied with it, but that doesn't mean we haven't responded. And he's saying they haven't responded yet satisfactorily. This is the kind of case, by the way, where the time pressure of elections now goes in the other direction. The lawsuit here is likely to be for show because Texas isn't even identifying what it wants to get, but I don't see it having the remedy that it's seeking before the election. So that's where things stand. Texas, probably for PR reasons, saying we want information on all these terrible non-citizens who are voting, but then admitting softly when pressed in the litigation that there are hardly any. And then in Pennsylvania, and important if small, but all of these small victories are potentially pivotal for the franchise when the Pennsylvania Supreme Court rules 4-3 that if people don't do their mail-in ballots exactly right, and in particular without the secrecy envelope, they still can vote by provisional ballot. That's today's election news, and it's going to be happening day in, day out. Some of it seems very small and technical, but it's these small and technical things that you never know could loom very large and practical come election day. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.